Hey y'all, Mike with Cardboard Kingdom. Welcome back to another Disney Lorcana market update video. Today's video is going to be quick. We're going to be hitting on the sealed side of things again because I just feel like there's so much going on that it's worth talking about, and I really want to hear your guys' thoughts. Right now, we're in a very interesting point in a place that we have not been in Lorcana thus far. Overall listings and availability supply for both the first chapter and set 2 Rise of the Floodborn are incredibly low. We are continued to see demand throughout, and it's just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. We had what we thought was going to be a nice little resupply of boxes coming onto the market for the first chapter through Amazon, but it looks like those orders are not going to be fulfilled. Yesterday, we started to get rumblings of orders being canceled. This morning, a whole new wave of people had their order canceled. I know there are still some pending, but to my knowledge, none have been fulfilled thus far. And so I'm of the opinion that they're just going to continue to be canceled. Obviously, some might get fulfilled, but based on these first 2 days that we're supposed to get their orders delivered, and then getting canceled at the last minute, I feel like that's the trend that we're going to continue to see. Why is that happening? I don't know. I don't want to speculate on it. I have no clue why that is happening. But at the end of the day, we're starting to see these really, really dry up. Now, the same thing goes for Rise of the Floodborn. This product, if you've been around, I'm of the belief that it's the least printed set in existence. There's only 5 or 6 listings of sealed cases on the market. The individual booster boxes are going for around 160, which is above MSRP. It's taken 9 months after release for them to get to this point, close to a year. But once again, if someone new comes into Lorcana, I think that Ravensburger is going to start to see a little bit of backlash in terms of prices for these individual cards. As the first chapter starts to dry up and we're getting to 270, 280, 300 for an individual box, or 1500 for an individual case, singles are going to get really expensive. So, your Maui, if you want 4 of them to play a Ruby deck, rather than it being, $45, $50 to acquire 4 of those, it's going to be $100. And new people coming to the game, their decks are gonna, if you want to have that core play set of some of these first chapter or second chapter cards, it's gonna get very costly. And so this is something that Ravensburger, they've done a good job of taking care of the players and making sure that the cards are reasonably affordable. Now look, they can't the IP is so popular that they can't control the secondary market, and they can print as much as they want, and they say that they're for the players and printing to demand, and I feel like they've done a good job of that. But at some point, for every set, this equilibrium is going to come where they're on to bigger and better things, and is it going to make sense to come back and do a reprint? I don't think it does for either of these first 2 sets right now, but I'm not counting it out of the realm of possibilities that Ravensburger might do that. And so I wanted to call our attention to an interview that ICV2.com did with the CEO of Ravensburger back in April, which, some of these questions are very, very pertinent right now, and I feel like it's worth kind of going over again. And once again, this interview is from April 15th of this year. So I mean, we're 6 months past it right now, but I think it's very relevant. So they asked him after aftermarket, I almost said supermarket, prices surges that put the game out of reach for many players. It is, as it first launched, prices have calmed down as more supply reached the market. Do you feel you've reached the proper equilibrium between too little and too much product in the marketplace? He goes on to say, aftermarket prices are subject to many dynamics, and while they are hard to ignore fully, they are not the primary indicators behind decision making. They do help us a bit in the early days of a launch to understand how well we are meeting market demand. Our research indicates that there are currently enough product out there for existing and new players to get their hands on, which means the supply-demand equilibrium is just right. Back in April, I would say this absolutely makes sense. The new releases were very readily available. There was no supply issues with Rise of the Floodborn. It was very cheap. Same with Into the Inklings at this point, heading into Ursula's Return, which remained very cheap. It's still like, a $80, $90 box right now if you look in the right spot. And first chapter was around like 200, 220. So back then, I think that this made complete sense. I think they're doing a great job with supply and demand. I think you could come into the game, pick up some booster boxes, build a deck, and be in a really good spot. Next question. You've shipped multiple waves of the initial releases. What are your expectations for multiple waves or reprints of Disney Lorcana products going forward? He says, we did reprint the first chapter once. It was not an easy endeavor, but we are very happy that we were able to make that happen as fast as we did to meet player interest. We watch, we listen, and we act. Our North Star is always and will be the Lorcana fan and making sure Disney Lorcana TCG is the best game it can be. All reprinting decisions will continue to be made with that in mind. As of right now, we're at a good equilibrium. Once again, this at the time, I think they had handled printing cycles very well. I think they were trying to take care of both the collectors and the players. I think they did a very, very good job of making sure that their products were available, but not worthless, and that trend has kind of continued to now. But now, as we sit here at 11:30 in the morning on a Thursday, in the middle of October, we're at a tipping point. And they are either going to have to make a statement saying, hey, we're not going to go back and reprint these first two sets. We already reprinted the first chapter. The second set, it took it took essentially a year to get back to MSRP. We feel like it's at a good point, and there's enough supply out there. Or are they going to go back and reprint the first chapter again? Are they going to do a full reprint for the second set? I think we're at that point where we kind of need to find out, because once again, as these sealed products start to creep higher and higher, and they become more investments and more collecting pieces, people will open them less and less. The singles on the market are going to become less and less, and so that price to enter becomes higher and higher for these people who need some of these staple cards, whether it's Rapunzel gifted with healing, Maui, Tamatoa, Tinkerbell, A Whole New World, Belle. There's all these different cards in the first set that are very playable. Or as we go into set two, people who need Sad Beast, or people who need Haram, and just some of these rares, the Madam Mims, the rabbits, foxes, etc. Goats. There's going to be a lot of these cards that are very playable, that are going to start to get pretty pricey. And so I think we're just at a very, very interesting spot. I personally, they seem like they're very forward thinking, and they had, whenever this interview was conducted, and some of those early price points for the first chapter, it had to be reprinted. The game was going to die. You weren't going to be able to afford product. You weren't going to be able to afford to build a deck. The prices were just simply, it was scalped too high, too quick. It was unsustainable. They had to reprint that set. They did. They constantly released it through the first half of 2024 here. I feel like they've done what they can. They've put their best foot forward. They've made sure that there was enough out there. But there's, no matter what, whether this is happening now or a year from now, this point is always going to come where these cards are playable, these cards are needed in decks, these cards are getting expensive. And so what happens? And I feel like this is the first time we're really going to see this through a natural progression and not just being scalped. Anyone who had scalped the first, these first couple of releases of the first chapter, they got burned when the reprint happened. Prices went from 300 to 180, right? They got essentially cut in half. And so now it's slowly worked back through natural market process and cycle to get back to where it is now. And it's time to find out what Ravensburger's made of. Are they gonna print this thing again and make the Enchanteds get cut in half again, and kind of ruin the secondary market in that sense? Or are they gonna say, hey, if you're gonna come into Lorcana, then you need to pay the current market prices. We're forward thinking. We're gonna come out with new ways for these cards. That's personally what I would love. I would love to see some sort of like first chapter, base set 2 or something like that, where it had some sort of indicator, so that way the people who had the original ones are going to be completely screwed, but people coming into the game have ways to get these core cards. So is that putting together like some sort of like starter deck that has a couple Mauis in it and they have some sort of difference on them, whether that's a date, whether that's an indicator, etc. Something to take care of the people who have been here, but also look out for the people who are coming next, without just completely reprinting this set again and again and again. So that's kind of the outcome that I would like to see. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I feel like I have a lot of faith in Ravensburger. I feel like they've done an amazing job thus far of managing this. I think they have a great balance of, not printing it to where it's worthless, but also, not overprinting it, but not printing too much of it. And at the same point, we're just kind of in this, this holding pattern. And I'm very interested to see what they're going to do. They've done a good job thus far balancing that problem, but I think it's going to evolve, and you're going to hear some grumpy people when they can't get their hands on the 4 cards that they need because they're priced out of the market for a rare from the first chapter, like Maui, for example. So let me know your guys' thoughts, guys. I'm very, very excited to watch this continue to kind of ebb and flow and find out what's going to happen over the coming months. Because, you know, when you think about the volume for the first chapter, it's not going to be long until, at the current demand, without any sort of increase in supply, a first chapter booster box will be $400 before the end of the year. And I think that's probably a little bit optimistic, but I think that is well within the range of being a legitimate outcome. And so, you know, are they fine with those boxes getting to 4, 5, 600? What about 1,000? Right? I mean, these boxes. This is the base set of Lorcana. It is an incredibly valuable, incredibly collectible product, and there's a lot of demand for it. And so this point's going to come at some time. This is the first time their feet are going to be kind of to the fire since this huge reprint that they did. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Look forward to hearing from you. We'll be back with another video soon. Bye.